Ranking Member of the House Intelligence Committee, Adam Schiff, we want to listen to that Q&A. The decision has been made by the committee itself to vote out this memo that was produced by the Republicans on that committee, looking at classified material about surveillance during the campaign. Here is just a compilation earlier of some lawmakers, whether this memo should be released or not.
It certainly should be, but somebody should explain how utterly insignificant it is.
This memo answers what I think are really legitimate questions, and I do think the FBI should look at it before it is released. So I want to play face-up poker.
No, I don't want it released yet. I don't. I want somebody who's without a political bias to come in and look at the allegations that I've seen. The way the FBI conducted itself in the Department of Justice bothers me.
No one at the White House has actually seen the memo, so it would be hard for us to make a decision.
Other lawmakers say they are tremendously disturbed by what they see in this memo and want to get it out. That's the position that the committee has taken tonight, voting along party lines to do just that. We're going to bring in our panel early. Tom Bevan, Real Clear Politics co-founder and publisher, Molly Hemingway, senior editor at The Federalist, and Charles Lane, opinion writer for The Washington Post. Okay, Molly, we wanted to let that breathe a little bit to get the details of kind of behind the scenes. The committee voting to release the Republican memo, but the Democratic memo voting not to release it at this moment.
Yes, and I mean, this is a summary memo. This is a 4-page memo that is just a summation of a year's worth of work, hundreds of thousands of pages of testimony and visits to foreign countries and speaking with all sorts of people. What broke today about McCabe, Andrew McCabe, the number 2 at FBI stepping down, suggests that we have a pretty big situation on our hands. He's only the most recent person to be demoted, step down, or be reassigned after congressional or other inquiries into some of what was happening over there at FBI. You had Bruce Orr, who was demoted twice. You had Peter Strzok, who had to be taken off the case. You have Baker, who was taken, who's gone, and Rybicki also. So this is quite a collection of people. Obviously, there's something huge going on, and I think a lot of people in the media are just kind of missing this very large story. Perhaps this memo will help us learn a little bit more about what it is that's causing all of these changes.
So, Tom, the deputy director, McCabe, leaves today. He was scheduled to retire mid-March. Leaves today kind of abruptly. We had sources saying that you could say that he was removed. The New York Times changed its headline and said that he stepped down under pressure. And this graph, in a recent conversation, Christopher Wray, the FBI director, raised concerns about a forthcoming Inspector General report examining the actions of Mr. McCabe and other senior FBI officials during the 2016 presidential campaign, when the Bureau was investigating both Hillary Clinton's email use and the Trump campaign's connection to Russia. In that discussion, according to one former law enforcement official close to Mr. McCabe, Mr. Wray suggested moving Mr. McCabe into another job, which would have been a demotion. All of this factoring in the day after Wray reads this memo up on Capitol Hill.
And as Britt said earlier, it could be a coincidence, but at this point, it's probably safe to assume there are no coincidences with regard to this situation. I think Molly's right. This is a big deal. The fact that the number 2 at the FBI has been removed, stepped down, whatever you want to say. I think the release of the memo, which is going to come in the next few days, it appears most likely that we're going to see this, is going to shed some light, a lot of light on why he stepped down and what's been going on behind the scenes at the FBI.
The partisan look at this, the fact that this is along party lines, the fact that 2 different lawmakers from 2 parties can look at the same thing and see something directly different and opposite is striking.
I was struck by Lindsey Graham, who said, I want someone without a political bias to look at this before it's released. And my thought was, where is he going to find that someone without a political bias? Because the situation is so polarized around this. Ted Lieu, who's an ultra-liberal Democrat, has said this is going to wind up like Al Capone's vault or whatever it is. You're going to walk in and there's nothing there. It's a big nothing burger. Other people are saying the Republicans is the most disturbing abuse of authority they've ever seen. It's supposed to bear, just to refresh everyone's memory, on the question of whether this Steele dossier influenced the issuance of a FISA warrant against a member of Trump's campaign or not. And that's a big...
Just to rewind, Christopher Steele is the British spy who was hired by Fusion GPS, a company that received money from the Hillary Clinton campaign and the DNC to do Oppo research.
Right. And so what I will be looking for in this document to make my own judgment is, do they really have a smoking gun on that? Can they really show that if not for the Steele dossier, this FISA warrant would not have been issued? That would be a big deal. If it's anything a little bit more murky than that, I think we're going to still have arguments.
I think this memo is better thought of as something that begins a discussion about these things. For instance, it's not just about whether the FISA application was based solely on this memo, on this dossier, but if it were used at all, if this opposition research document paid and funded by the Hillary Clinton campaign.
If they knew
and we know that Andrew
opposition
McCabe said recently that there was nothing in that dossier that was verified other than publicly available information. So if that was used in any way, that's a pretty serious situation. Also, there were other ways the dossier was used. Information in it was briefed to members of Congress. And then, of course, it was also the basis for this entire whisper campaign about treasonous collusion between Trump and Russia. It was the fact of that dossier being briefed to President Trump and President Obama and then quickly leaked to a media outlet that kind of created this whole hysteria that we've been subjected to for a year. So there are a lot of questions, and a lot of questions about what senior FBI officials were doing playing around with this.
And the fact that we're not even talking about the Inspector General's report, which also should be coming out very soon, whether we get to see it or not,
right.
It's going to be there.
Right, which in many respects would carry more weight than either a partisan memo from the Republicans or a partisan memo from the Democrats. But let's release everything. Let's have the public have the information. Remember, the argument to publish the dossier, right, from CNN and from BuzzFeed a year ago was that this is something that had effect inside the government with the FBI and the president. That same argument can be used to release the memo from Republicans, from Democrats, and also the Inspector General's report. Let's see it all. Let's let the public make their determination about what's in those documents.
I mentioned that the New York Times kind of changed its headline through the day as they got more information about the McCabe step down. But another piece has that this memo hints towards Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General, as being in the target, basically, and he is the person who could get rid of Mueller.
Right, and I guess the idea there is he renewed the FISA warrant after he got into office.
Submitted the application.
Right. Submitted the application to FISA against Carter Page.
Right, which could cut either way. It could show that a member of the very own Trump administration thought it was a valid FISA warrant. So I don't know whether he's in trouble with the president or he's in trouble with the president's critics. We'll have to find out. On this point of why the interaction between the IG report and McCabe stepping down, the president, or Jeff Sessions, had been reported to be pressuring Wray very hard to get rid of McCabe a week ago. And it could almost be that Wray has sort of seized on this IG report to finally give Jeff Sessions what he wanted. And so I'm even not clear whether it could both be true, that there's criticism of McCabe in the IG report and that it's somehow being used as an excuse to pressure him out a little bit before he wanted to go. And we should all remember, he only had 4 more weeks to go anyway. He's still going to draw his paycheck. So in terms of the actual difference this makes to the FBI, it's not that great.
A lot of breaking news. We took the Democrats who came to the microphones there outside the House Intelligence Committee meeting. They just had that vote. We have not seen the Republicans or had any sign of the committee chairman, Devin Nunes.